Welcome to a new deep dive, and this one's tailored specifically for you, the learner. Today we're looking at quite a tricky chess scenario. It's rooted in the Philidor Defense.
That's right. Yeah, you shared a game with us. Your teammate, rated about, what, 1450?
Around there, yeah.
Fell into this really sharp 11-move checkmate. So we're going to break that down, figure out exactly what went wrong.
And more importantly, how you can avoid it.
Exactly. How to sidestep that trap.
Right. Our mission here is to turn this into a real learning moment for you, giving you some solid strategies, ways to spot and escape this kind of thing.
Think of it as your guide for these tricky opening spots.
Okay, so the move sequence, just to set the scene, was 1, E4, E5-2, Nf3, D6-3, Bc4, H6-4, 00, Nf6-5, Nh4, and by E4.
Ah, that capture.
Yeah, 6. Qf3, Nf6-7, Re1 Bg4, qb3, D6-9, H3, Bd7-10, Bxf7 plus Ke7.
King has to move.
And then 11, Nh6 tag, mate.
Game over. Sharp stuff.
Definitely. Okay, let's unpack it. Starts 1, E4, E5, 2, Nf3, D6. That's the Philidor Defense. What's the basic idea behind the Philidor?
Well, the Philidor, it's named after Francois-André Philidor, of course.
Yeah.
It's generally seen as a solid choice for black.
Solid, but maybe a bit passive sometimes.
It can be, yeah. The main aim is usually to build a strong pawn structure, but you have to be careful not to just, sit back too much. It requires careful handling.
Got it. So early on, move 3, black plays 3.h6. Now I know sometimes that move stops a knight jumping to g5.
It does, yeah. That's often the intention.
But here, so early, is it the best use of a move?
Probably not. In this specific spot, 3.86 is, well, maybe a slight inaccuracy. It deals with Ng5, sure, but it doesn't develop a piece.
Right, it's not bringing a knight or bishop out.
Exactly.
Right.
And in chess openings, tempo is crucial. That's your turn, your chance to make progress. Playing h6 doesn't really fight for the center or get a piece into the game, so it kind of gives white a little bit of a head start in development.
Okay, that makes sense. Now move 5 is where things seem to really go off track for black. 5.m by c4, taking that pawn on e4. It looks free, right? Central pawn.
It looks free, and grabbing central pawns is often good, yes. But this is where things get tricky.
So why is it such a big mistake here?
Well, a few reasons. First, while you gain a pawn, look where the knight lands. It's a bit exposed on e4.
Okay.
And more importantly, it opens up the diagonal for white's queen. White's already got the bishop on c4, pointing towards f7.
Ah, and the knight moving clears the path.
Precisely. It allows white to play Qf3, hitting f7 and the knight on e4. See white's moves, Bc4, Nf3, 00, and now Nh4. They're all setting up potential attacks. Taking that pawn just walks right into it.
I see. So white's Nh4 and Qf3 are working together, targeting f7. Can you remind us why f7 is often such a weak spot early on?
Sure. The f7 square and f2 for white similarly is unique in the starting position because it's only defended by the king.
Only the king, right?
So if you can pile up attackers on it quickly, like with a bishop on c4 and a queen on f3 or h5, it can become a major target before black gets properly defended.
Okay, and then later black plays 8.b6 and 9.bd7. These seem like, well, they don't feel very active.
They really aren't. And that's another key part of the problem here. These moves show a pattern. Black is moving pawns, like b6, or retreating a piece like the bishop back to d7.
Instead of developing.
Instead of developing the other pieces, like the queenside knight or bishop, and crucially, instead of castling, getting the king safe should be a top priority.
Because the king is stuck in the middle.
Exactly, stuck in the center, undefended. And these pawn moves and retreats, they just give white more time, more tempi to ramp up the attack.
Which leads us to the big moment. 10, Bxf7 plus sacrificing the bishop. That looks dramatic. What's the point?
It is dramatic, and it's the decisive blow. It's a calculated sacrifice. White gives up the bishop to force the black king onto e7.
Pulling it out into the open.
Precisely. It lures the king away from any potential shelter, and critically, it vacates the f7 square while opening up the g6 square for white's knight. It totally exploits black's lack of development and the king's vulnerability.
And that sets up the final move. 11, Ng6 tag. Checkmate delivered by the knight.
Yeah, a classic mating pattern. The knight on g6 hits the king, and it also covers the f8 and d8 escape squares. The bishop that was sacrificed is technically still attacking f7, controlling d6 and f6. The king on e7 has nowhere to go.
That's a pattern worth remembering.
Definitely. It comes up in various forms when a king gets caught in the center like that.
Okay, so let's really pinpoint the mistakes. We mentioned 3.f6. How did that seemingly small move contribute later?
Well, like we said, it was a lost tempo. That one move could have been used to play, say, 3.s6. developing a piece, preparing to castle, because black was slightly behind in development from that early stage.
White could build the attack faster.
Exactly. White got pieces like the bishop, knight, queen, and rook coordinated for the attack,
Right.
while black's pieces were still mostly on their starting squares.
Yeah.
That initial tempo difference snowballed.
And that capture, 5 N by A4, it's such a natural human impulse, right? See pawn, take pawn.
It really is. But it's a huge lesson. Always look beyond the immediate game.
What should you be thinking instead?
Before you capture anything, especially in the opening, ask yourself, is my piece safe after the capture? What can my opponent do in response? Here, the response Qf3 is devastating. It attacks the knight and threatens checkmate or serious damage on f7.
So calculation, even just 1 or 2 moves ahead, is vital.
Absolutely. You need to weigh the material gain against the positional consequences, the dynamic factors.
Yes.
Is it worth opening lines for your opponent? Is your piece going to be trapped or attacked?
Right. And those later moves, point B6 and BD7, they showed maybe a misunderstanding of priorities.
I think so. It looks like a focus on minor pawn structure issues, or just reacting defensively by moving the bishop back instead of addressing the fundamental problem: the underdeveloped king side and the unsafe king.
So what should have been the priority?
Development and king safety, always. Get the knights and bishops out, control central squares and castle. Get that king tucked away behind some pawns. Delaying castling when the center is opening up or when your opponent is developing aggressively towards your king is just asking for trouble.
Okay, makes sense. So for you, the learner, listening right now, how can you avoid falling into this specific trap or similar ones? What are the key takeaways?
Number 1, prioritize rapid development. Get your minor pieces, knights and bishops off the back, rank quickly. Aim them towards the center.
So moves like Don F6, B7.
Exactly. And then castle. Those should be your top priorities in most standard openings, including the Philidor. Avoid spending early moves on, say, flank pawn pushes like Tod A6 or point A6, unless there's a very concrete reason.
Okay, develop castle. Got it. And about grabbing material like that E4 pawn.
Always double check captures. Ask, is my piece safe after I take? And what's the follow-up? Here, seeing white's Nh4 in the open line to f3 should ring alarm bells.
So instead of 5 N by 4, what were safer options?
Much safer would be development. Something like 5bc5, developing the bishop, eyeing f2, preparing to castle, or 5b7, simply preparing to castle immediately. Both keep the position solid.
And keeping an eye on f7. If you see bc4 and the queen potentially coming to f3?
Yes, be vigilant about f7. If your opponent signals an attack there, you need to react. Don't just ignore it.
How can you resent it?
Moves like b6 are often good. It develops a piece, challenges white's bishop, and defends f7, or sometimes qe7, bringing the queen back for defense. The key is not letting them get that Bxf7 plus sacrifice in easily.
So a general opening checklist might be develop knights, develop bishops, castle.
That's a great rule of thumb. Knights before bishops is often good too, but the main thing is getting him out and getting the king safe. That sequence avoids so many opening disasters.
Now going back to move 3, instead of 3-point arc 6, you mentioned 3-point Nf6 as a solid alternative against 3bc4. Why is that better?
3-point Nf6 is very principled. It develops a knight to its most natural square. It attacks white's e4 pawn, immediately challenging the center.
And it prepares castling.
Right, it gets black closer to castling kingside. So if white castles before us, black can play 4b7.
Setting up castling.
Exactly. And now, even if white tries that 5 Nf4 idea, aiming for f7,
Black can just castle.
black just plays 5. Oh, king is safe. The f7 pawn is defended by the rook on f8 now. And actually, white's knight on h4 suddenly looks a bit silly, doesn't it? It's on the edge of the board, not doing much.
Yeah, it looks kind of misplaced there.
So that sequence leads to a much healthier, safer position for black.
It's good to remember that, falling into traps happens. Even strong players blunder in the opening sometimes.
Well, absolutely. It's part of chess. Everyone falls for traps now and then. The important thing isn't that it happened, is what you do next.
How you learn from it?
Exactly. Don't get discouraged. Analyze it. Understand why the trap worked. That's how you improve.
So besides analyzing your own losses, how can you proactively get better at openings?
Well, actively studying the openings you play is key. You don't need to memorize endless variations, but understanding the main ideas, the typical plans, and the common traps. That's crucial.
Using resources like online opening explorers.
Yeah, tools on sites like chess.com or Lichess are fantastic. Look up the Philidor, see the main lines after 3bc4, see what strong players do. Just learning the first, say, 5 or 6 moves of your main openings gives you a solid foundation.
And what about general chess skills like tactics?
Huge. Tactical training is essential. That Bxf7 plus sacrifice, that's a tactic, a combination. The more tactics you practice, the better you get at spotting these patterns, both threats against you and opportunities for you.
So doing tactics puzzles helps you recognize these dangerous ideas before they happen on the board.
Definitely. It sharpens your board vision, your calculation, your pattern recognition, all vital skills for avoiding traps and playing better chess overall.
And finally, that point about reviewing your games.
Cannot stress that enough. Reviewing your games, especially losses, is where so much learning happens. If you can, go over it with someone stronger, or use an engine to point out mistakes. But don't just look at the engine line. Try to understand why your move was wrong and why the suggested move is better.
Understand the principles behind the moves.
Exactly. That's how you build real chess understanding.
Okay, so wrapping up on the Philidor here. It can still be a decent opening, right?
For sure. It's solid. But as this game shows, you need to be careful. Especially if white plays aggressively. You need to know the ideas and potential dangers.
And the keys are understanding traps like this one we looked at today, focusing on those core principles. Develop your pieces early, get your king safe.
And always think twice before grabbing material.
Right. Those things help you navigate these tricky lines with more confidence.
Maybe try out the Philidor, some casual games. Keep these defensive ideas in mind. And definitely share this with your teammate and the rest of your chess group. Talking through these traps together helps everyone get stronger.
Yeah, definitely. We hope this deep dive gave you some really practical stuff for your own chess journey.
Keep exploring, keep learning.
And for you, the learner, one last thought to take away. We talked a lot about specific moves and traps today, like Bxf7 plus Sik. But try to see the bigger picture too. The reason that sacrifice worked wasn't just the geometry of the pieces. It worked because of the underlying principles. Black's lag in development, the king stuck in the center, the lack of coordination.
That's a great point. The tactics often flow from the positional foundation.
Exactly. So as you study openings and analyze your games, always ask yourself, are my pieces active? Is my king safe? Am I controlling important squares? Thinking about those fundamental questions will help you avoid not just this trap, but countless others, and build a much more solid game overall. Keep those principles in mind, and good luck with your next games.